Right now on the National Weather Desk, most of Maine is in a state of emergency this morning, days after torrential rain and powerful winds left much of the state underwater or without power. Our coverage of the storm's aftermath shows you the damage, the rescues, and the cleanup efforts. The volcano in Iceland is still spewing lava this morning. How long could this eruption last? Could weather have played a role in the death of dozens of geese? And one Nevada community says it's time to contain a problem with wild horses.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. The storm that hit the East Coast this week left a trail of destruction across Maine. The state faced catastrophic flooding, massive power outages, and weeks, if not months, of cleanup. The governor declared a state of civil emergency for 14 of Maine's 16 counties. As of this morning, more than 250,000 homes and businesses are still without power. Some may be in the dark through Christmas. The National Weather Service calling the flooding of one river a 100-year flood. All that water trapped people and forced businesses to close. We have team coverage this morning, starting with Brad Rogers in Western Maine.
Sunday River remains closed after 5 inches of pounding rain melted snow on the slopes, washed out roads, and left a muddy mess at the base of the mountain.
It looked like a lot of the lower level condos were flooded.
Sunday River says ski operations will reopen as quickly as possible and snowmaking will resume once repairs are made, but no word yet on when they can reopen.
Very concerned for the ski season and mostly the employees that work there and depend on that every year.
Harry Decker has friends who work at Sunday River. His basement flooded when the Androscoggin River reached near record high levels. Have you ever seen the water this high?
Never. And we've had a lot of people down here that have been here for 60, 70 years in the area and they've never seen it this high either.
About 75% of the homes here in Bethel still have no electricity. CMP crews couldn't even reach many homes and businesses here because of the flooded and washed out roads.
I just came down to see if I could paddle across and then heard that there's live wires.
We all live on little islands now, so we just can't get anywhere.
Tim Remington owns an assisted living center in Andover, which is now running off a generator.
We've been out of power since, when it all went out. But the biggest thing was getting access, getting people to the facility to care for them.
It's out of control. Like, this river is so placid sometimes that we swim in it. It's like a lake in the summer sometimes.
How's your basement looking now?
Things are floating. The water is up to my knees, so I'm not a short person. That's a lot of water.
We had determined that the river was getting too high for our comfort, and we decided to start making some evacuations to be safe.
At a trailer park off Upper Main Street,
we're under an evacuation order.
3 adults and several pets had to be rescued.
And then when the water finally breached the road, we went back through and they were still in their homes.
While some desperately tried to pump water out of their homes, others were watching for any sign they would be next and what that would mean for their families.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah, bridges were just covered with water and logs and trees were down.
Historic flooding across Franklin County has torn up roads and left businesses underwater, like here on Main Street in Farmington.
Honestly, it just looked like a big swimming pool. Like everything was covered in just water.
The front entrance of Walgreens, when we drove by, actually, there was product, if you will, say 3 or 4 feet high, that was floating on the inside of the doors.
Emergency management officials expect repairs across Franklin County to take several days.
Franklin County has a lot of damage.
Here in Carabassa Valley, Route 27 crumbled Monday night, and this pickup truck collapsed into the roadway a short ways away.
There's going to be every effort put forth by everybody involved in rebuilding roads.
Cedar Andrews was skiing over the weekend and tried to find a way out Monday night.
We almost drove right off the road. There was a whole section of the road was gone.
Flooding and pounding surf caused problems in southern New England as well. The waves were so big in Rhode Island, the water washed into businesses along the coast. Sand and water now covered floors and roads. People trapped in their apartments by flood waters had to be rescued. As Gabrielle Caracciolo reports, the water rose so fast it caught most people by surprise.
Had no idea the rainstorm was going to be this bad.
Up and down the Patuxent River, streets are flooded, leaving cars, homes, and businesses destroyed.
Pretty sad. Very sad. And this is not the first time this area had been flooded, but this is the worst I've seen it.
On Wellington Avenue in Cranston, you can't tell where the river is supposed to end and the road would normally begin.
There was no barriers up, and she drove through, and the water just rose up, and she got stuck right there in the middle.
Douglas Rogers says this is his mom's car in the water, where she had to abandon it and crawl out last night.
I'm just thankful that she made it out alive. She could have lost her life last night. And, you know, we can always replace a car, but a loved one you can't.
Down the river in Warwick, you can't get into businesses on Knight Street like Apponaug Brewing. It's the same in West Warwick. Near River Street and East Avenue, the back parking lot at Wayne's Automotive looks more like a lake.
Granted, we do have the river right there, but it never really posed any threat to me before.
Owner Wayne Simus is doing what he can to keep the damage to a minimum.
You know, the sandbags to help reduce the flow going in and just try pumping it out as much as possible.
In Vermont, the worst of the flooding appears to be over. The good news, there are no deaths or injuries, but more than 20 people across the state had to be rescued from the rising waters. And for the second time this year, people across the Green Mountain State are once again adding up the damage. In New Jersey, flooding from the Passaic River continued to cause problems last night. In Patterson, water spilled into the streets, flooding basements and also cars. There's also a state of emergency downriver in the town of Wayne. People trapped in their homes had to be rescued. The good news is that water is now starting to recede. Flooding isn't just a problem on the East Coast. Folks in California are dealing with rising water as well. This was a scene last night in Sacramento County. At least one car got stuck in the water. Police shut down most of a highway near the state capitol. Heavy rain and snow triggering the flooding. Meantime, Southern California is bracing for heavy rain over the next 2 days. A flood watch has been issued for a large portion of the region. The heaviest rain will fall this afternoon through tomorrow night. 2 to 4 inches are expected along the coast, with 4 to 8 inches in the mountains. There's even a risk of a small, short-lived tornadoes. A volcanic eruption continues in Iceland this morning, but officials say it is weakening. Fred Pleitkin has more.
The Arctic night illuminated as the Earth breaks apart. From the fissure bursts its molten core. Weeks of earthquakes led to this display of our planet's fire and force. It's never possible to say exactly when or if a volcano like this one near the town of Grindavik will erupt. Officials took no chances, though, evacuating the population after weeks of tremors. Thousands of shakes were felt in November, and all knew what they could bring. Thankfully, none were in Grindavik town when the volcano, around 2 miles away, finally did erupt. This crack in the surface of our world, close to 4 kilometers or more than 2 miles long, spewing lava.
This is as close as the authorities are going to let us to the volcanic eruption in the southwest of Iceland. It's a so-called fissure eruption. That means an eruption along a crack that can be several miles long rather than on a volcanic cone. Now, one of the good things about these eruptions is that actually usually they don't spew ash into the atmosphere very high, which can and has in the past disrupt air travel internationally. Of course, in a place like Iceland, that can have massive effects.
Previous eruptions in Iceland have lasted weeks or even months. In the town of Grindavik, the earthquake damage is clear. The lava may follow.
If this activity goes on, then the big question is, will Grindavik be inhabitable in the long run?
Whether people can ever move back here depends on a new set of geological circumstances being created right now.
New images of the planet Uranus have been released. NASA's Webb Space Telescope recently captured the dynamic planet with rings, moons, storms, and other atmospheric features, including a seasonal polar cap. The telescope captured the planet's dim inner and also outer rings. Many of Uranus's 27 known moons and other small moons within the rings were also observed. The image expands upon a 2-colored version released earlier this year. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll look at ways you can protect your outdoor Christmas decorations from severe weather. And we'll look at how one Nevada town is dealing with a growing wild horse population.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
An alarming discovery in a neighborhood near Sacramento, California this week. Residents found dozens of dead geese. It's still unclear what happened, but officials believe the weather played a role. Kayla Moeller has more. Some viewers might find the images you're about to see are disturbing.
And this is how we found them, laying all around randomly.
In a bizarre turn of events, the peaceful atmosphere of this residential area was awakened to the disturbing sight of dead geese.
That's crazy. Never ever seen that before, never.
Tom Dickinson says he thinks the birds were struck by lightning.
You know, I heard a lot of thunder last night, but there was this one that was just unbelievably loud, like it was close. And it was just as loud, it was the loudest thunder I'd ever heard.
Retired wildlife biologist Dan Arola says the neighbor's theory very well could be correct.
In fact, it seems most likely to me. I've been working with birds for 40 years in Sacramento, and I've never heard of this happening.
He says it could have either been the pressure wave or a lightning strike itself that killed them.
And birds are always flying at night, from feeding to resting areas. So they very well could have been up in the air when that lightning hit.
Oh yeah, he's right under my tree there.
The wildlife expert tells me the majority of the dead birds were cackling geese, very similar looking to the Canada goose. The Department of Fish and Wildlife says they are aware of the issue and will be collecting carcasses.
There's probably more out there that I haven't seen,
Christmas is 5 days away. If you've been dealing with stormy weather, your outdoor Christmas decorations could be at risk. Sam Chimenti has some tips for those with festive holiday homes on how to keep them safe during severe weather.
This weather could have your Christmas decor looking lopsided, but we don't want that.
The first thing you should do if you're going to keep your inflatables up these next couple of days, especially if they've been out for a little while, just go and check the stakes. Make sure that they're hammered down nice and secure so that this Christmas icon hopefully won't go anywhere. Now, if you have a family of inflatables a little bit more out in the open, it might be best for these next couple nights to just unplug them. Let them sit, let them rest, because 45-mile-an-hour winds, if they're up through that, these dinosaurs might go extinct again. And finally, you want to make sure the Christmas lights on your house are safe during a storm. And there's many different ways you can go about protecting the outlets that you're plugging all your lights into. And then another good thing that you can think of doing is covering up any of these vulnerable extension cords with some tape. Prevents any moisture from hopefully getting in there, causing the lights to short circuit. I know it looks a little jerry-rigged, but I actually really like this setup here because I'm the one that did it. 1 week until Christmas. Here's hoping your house stays shining like the Griswolds.
Winter officially starts tomorrow. That means our days will soon be getting longer. Theron Zahn explains.
We are just days away from the shortest day of the year. The winter solstice happens on December 21st. That means we'll have the least amount of daylight within the day, and then the days will start getting longer. If you're a fan of nighttime, hey, you can look ahead because the shortest day of the year is also the longest night.
Experts say Oklahoma City's average annual temperature is increasing, and now thanks to data collected through an urban heat mapping campaign, officials know exactly which neighborhoods experience the most heat. Katie Arata tells us more about the data and how the city will use it to help people in OKC.
In August, over 200 volunteers drove routes through 350 square miles of Oklahoma City with sensors on their cars.
Temperature and humidity sensors, and then also some had air quality sensors. So we split up these routes all around the city, but looking at points of interest that were important to us, like, where would we find vulnerable populations to heat, like around clinics and community centers, transit centers, bus stops, those sorts of things.
The data collected is displayed in an interactive heat map
that you can zoom in. When you zoom into a neighborhood, it kind of automatically updates so you can see more, like a very granular, detailed level of how much heat you see in these neighborhoods, and you can see the difference between these neighborhoods.
On the heat map, you can see where urban heat islands are located in OKC.
This is where unshaded areas, mostly hard surfaces, parking lots, buildings, absorb heat throughout the day. They'll feel much hotter at ground level where the people are, because of all of this super radiating heat.
Because of the intense heat in these areas, energy demand is increased.
This affects our electricity demand and usage. So costs to residents and costs to businesses are going to increase. Just the cost of keeping the lights on.
The OKC Office of Sustainability will use the data to make recommendations to the city to help people and reduce the temperature in the heat islands.
So cooling centers is one method. Another, like I mentioned, is reducing the parking minimums. So every new commercial development that is built or added onto for of a significant amount, they're required to have a minimum number of parking spaces.
Heavy rainfall has drenched American cities from coast to coast this year. As climate change intensifies storms, many communities are updating their storm water management approach and thinking about how to design more resilient cities. Emily Gracie sat down with an expert to find out how they are doing this and why it's so important.
The way that we build out the places that we live in and work in and get around, they tend to be hard surfaces. So buildings, parking lots, roads. So when it rains, and that hits these surfaces, it can't soak into the ground anymore. And so that water has to go somewhere. Historically, what we've done is build storm sewers, pipes underground that can accept this water from the surface through those grates you see, and then it's sent downstream, usually to a stream or river, or sometimes to a wastewater treatment plant. Those pipes are sized for a certain size rain event. And so when we get a big storm, there's potential to overwhelm the capacity of those pipes.
And then the water that is making it through these pipes and out to streams and rivers, what's in that water? Is pollution a concern with this as well?
For one, we're driving around in cars that have tires on them. We know we have to replace those tires. So where's that rubber going? Well, it's shedding off into tiny particles that are eventually ending up in our water. Things like metals are shed off of our vehicle brakes, but also can come off of roofing materials like asphalt shingles. Those creatures, like fish that are living down in those streams that may eventually get this water, this affects their ability to think and to know where to swim, to say spawn.
So we're probably not going to all just up and leave a city or abandon a city. So what's the solution here?
With newer development, it generally is being required to build in some kind of stormwater management feature that can help to hold that water when it runs off the parking lot or capture it off the side of a road or as it's coming off a roof. And so it's slowing that water down to prevent that flood pulse downstream, but it's also helping to treat it. It's helping to remove some of those metals and these other sort of toxic pollutants that we don't want ending up in our stream.
To hear about one city that has been very successful with green approaches to stormwater management, check out the longer version of this interview on our YouTube channel. Just search the National Weather Desk.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Wild horses roaming in residential areas is a growing problem in Nevada. As Sophie Lincoln explains, a recent increase in car-horse collisions has community members looking for solutions.
While some neighborhoods have to be wary of mountain lions or bears, the Damani Ranch area is mindful of its wild horse population. Sharing the roads with them has proven to be hazardous for both the horses and drivers.
We've had almost 12 horse deaths in just the last couple weeks.
Reno Council member Naomi Dewar has been active in addressing this issue, helping lead a project that will build fencing to keep the horses off the roadways.
The idea here is to keep the horses and the people separated and safe.
But that construction isn't expected to begin until March 2024. Concerned citizens are now requesting action from state and local officials, whether that be in the form of reinstating the diversionary feeding program, accelerating the fencing project, or increasing lighting in the community for better visibility at night. Reporting in Reno, Sophie Lincoln.
We love to connect with you. You can find us on all your favorite social media platforms. Just search the National Weather Desk. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Angela Brown. Make it a great Wednesday, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.